Hey everybody, this is Blake here, and welcome to my review of Thor: The Dark World. I don't know why they just can't call it Thor 2: The Dark World, but apparently it's all trendy now that sequels discard the numbers in their titles. Honestly, like 5 years down the line when somebody gets introduced to this franchise, presuming they continue to make Thor movies, they're just going to be really confused. When you actually look at all the different Marvel movie adaptations, I believe that Iron Man set the bar too high for the first lineup of Marvel films, which began with Iron Man and ended with Captain America. It was just too great for its own good to where all of the follow-ups, which not only include the sequels, but the other Marvel films like Captain America, they just could not compare. And it's sad because these are solid flicks in their own right, but every time I'd watch them, I'd think, okay, this is decent or pretty good, but Iron Man was just so much better. Why can't they recapture the magic of that film? Maybe my expectations are being very unreasonable there, but that's just what I feel. Now, in the case of Thor, I actually felt Thor was the best of the Iron Man follow-ups. The only one that I'd say is comparable to it is Iron Man 2. And I know there's a lot of people who disagree with me there, but I thought Iron Man 2 was a pretty strong follow-up to Iron Man, even if it wasn't as great. Well, Thor I thought was a straight-up good movie. What made it really end up being kind of disappointing, though, was it had a spectacular first act. That first 20-30 minutes was amazing, and it convinced me that I was going to be in for a real treat, possibly even seeing something that was equal, if not superior, to Iron Man. But then once he gets sent down to Earth, so much of that magic was lost. It became a more expensive version of Masters of the Universe. The humor became really uneven. Some of the minor characters were really boring, and even when they get back to Asgard at the end, once again, it just wasn't as good as what we got in the first 20-30 minutes. There's something really aggravating about a movie that starts off strong but gets progressively worse. And even though Thor never became a bad film, or at least never descended into bad movie territory, just the sudden drop in quality was very distracting. But at the same time, I was really looking forward to Thor 2 because I saw so much potential in the story of Thor, even more so than all the other Marvel flicks. You're not just dealing with, science and, a war story. You're dealing with gods, with magic, and different worlds that you can't really do in an Incredible Hulk movie or even an Iron Man movie. And I was just hoping that they would go ahead and explore all these different worlds for a sequel, and that really got me excited for this project, even more so than Iron Man 3, even though I figured Iron Man 3 would have been the better movie. But the problem with both Iron Man 3 and Thor 2 is, whereas the first Iron Man cast too large of a shadow over the other Marvel movies, the Avengers is doing the same for the second lineup of films. Both Thor 2 and Iron Man 3 felt so small scale in comparison, because how do you top just the final battle alone in the Avengers? So that's definitely going to be an issue for the remainder of the second lineup, and I'm sure it will be the same problem with the third lineup after the Avengers 2 comes out. But let's go ahead and just start talking about Thor 2, what it does right and what it does wrong. First off, my overall opinion is Thor 2, and I'm just going to be calling it Thor 2, not Thor: The Dark World. Thor 2 is an entertaining movie, but it's not what I'd call exceptional. Let's start off with what I really did like. The special effects were predictably very good. At no point did I feel the CGI or green screen work ever looked too much like I was watching CGI or green screen work. It all looked very realistic. And I thought the designs were pretty cool, if a bit derivative. I don't know, for some reason so many special effects in this movie reminded me of special effects in other movies. Like, the main villain's second in command kind of resembled the alien from Predator. I don't know if I'd say that's homage, maybe it's unintentional, maybe they were just flat out ripping these movies off, but I don't know, it was kind of distracting, but I still thought the designs in themselves were pretty cool. There was not a single boring looking monster or vehicle or setting. and that's as I've said in previous reviews, I'm always more interested in the design more than how the design is executed. It's very easy to have polished looking special effects, but when you have creative looking special effects, even if once again they're reminding me of other movies, there is a difference between original and creative. That's what's going to get my interest more. The action scenes are pretty good. When it came to the hand-to-hand stuff that involved more grounded in reality choreography, it struggled. I felt the camera was always too close, that it was too jittery, the editing was too tight. But when it came to more special effects-driven action sequences, like whenever Thor would, throw his hammer or whatever, it was much better there. I thought the action scenes were generally really enjoyable, and they were well shot. But just as long as it was more about the special effects than the hand-to-hand choreography. I will also say that of all the Marvel movies, this one definitely had the fastest pace. Holy shit, did this movie move really quickly. The pacing has always been kind of an issue with the Marvel films, but this one, I don't see how anybody could think Thor 2 is boring. I'm sure there are people who feel that way, but I don't know. The film just moves so quickly that I never became tired. I never wanted to get over with. I was just enjoying myself from the beginning to end, even when I was nitpicking it. The worst one in terms of its pacing was definitely Captain America, whereas the Iron Man films were a little bit more leisurely paced, which worked for them, and what was the Incredible Hulk would have been fast-paced if it wasn't for some useless subplots, but Thor 2, just from beginning to end, it's just one action scene moving to the next action scene. I also laughed whenever Thor 2 wanted me to laugh. The only exception was the character of Darcy. I didn't really mind anything she did or said throughout the movie. I just felt that the context was always wrong. Like during the finale, all this crazy stuff is happening, the end of the world is possibly at hand, and she's making all these different jokes and wisecracks, which just, I don't know, it doesn't seem like this character is taking the potential end of the world very seriously. It's a total tone killer, and this actually does tie into one of my biggest criticisms regarding Thor 2, but I'm not quite there yet. I did like the interactions between Thor and Loki, even though there wasn't enough of that. More about that later. And I was really surprised, though, that they really made Natalie Portman's character, I believe her name was Jane, much more compelling than she was in the first one. I thought the love story between them was very dull in the first Thor movie, whereas here I was surprised at how much I enjoyed their chemistry, their bantering, and they have like this slap kiss dynamic going on, and but still it was always fun watching them interact, so I was really impressed with that. But now let's discuss what I did not like about Thor 2. Well, first off, the trailer once again misled me. Okay, for those who don't remember, when Iron Man 3 came out, I was furious because the trailers made it look like it was going to be about Iron Man's struggle with the Mandarin, and that seemed awesome based on the trailers. Well, it wasn't, and I was pissed off. I wasn't sure if I was being pissed off for the right reasons, but that was horrible, horrible marketing. Thor 2 isn't much better, although it wasn't as aggravating. Based on the trailers, I thought it was going to be about Thor, his comrades, and Loki and Jane going on some quest to do whatever, but they would all be a major part of the movie. Well, for one, Thor's, I like to call them his underlings, even though they're supposed to be his comrades, but they seem kind of useless in comparison to him. They're not in it that much. In fact, I think they have even less screen time than they did in the first film. They only show up in the beginning, and that's really it. But then they kind of build up certain characters to where you expect more of them, but then it just doesn't happen. The biggest example is with the female of the group. You get the impression that she has feelings for Thor, but other than a few scenes, it just seems kind of like a wasted subplot. And Loki surprisingly didn't have that much to do. He's probably in the movie about 20-25 minutes total, and so I was really hoping that he'd have more screen time, considering the trailers really play up his presence, but he didn't have that much screen time, so that really pissed me off. Really, as a whole, I felt all of these relationships and subplots were were barely glanced over. Thor 2 really feels like it's just kind of in a hurry to get itself over with. Like, the filmmakers are just killing time till they can get to the Avengers 2, which is obviously what they really are looking forward to making, whereas everything that happens between, the Avengers and the Avengers 2 is just kind of like filler. But at the same time, I have to admit, as pissed off as Iron Man 3 could make me, at least that felt like a standalone film. Thor 2, I don't know, it felt so padded and unnecessary in terms of its story. I never felt like the plot or even the characters went anywhere. There's no real character arc. One thing I will give credit to all the Iron Man movies is, even though, Tony Stark would usually resolve various internal conflicts by the end of each film, every subsequent film he'd have a new character arc. Well, here Thor is a very static character. All his development happened in the first movie. He's just a straight up good guy, doesn't make many mistakes, and he's become kind of a boring invincible hero. I thought it was odd too, because his father, Odin, portrayed by Anthony Hopkins, is kind of a douche. It's almost like they kind of switched personalities. Now Odin is really showing signs of being arrogant and conceited, and there's this one part where he briefly interacts with Natalie Portman's character where, like, Jesus Christ, and he gave Thor crap for what he did in the first movie. I really felt like the filmmakers wanted that same dynamic where, Thor is kind of rebellious against his father, and, his father has to show tough love and be a bit too stern on him. But this time it just didn't feel justified. Like, they forced that into the movie when it just felt so out of character. Now, I have not read any of the comics, so I don't know which movie captured that Odin's personality better, but it just didn't work from film to film. The villain is really god-awful boring. He looks cool, I like the design, but his motives are very generic. He wants to throw the world into darkness, and they keep saying that too, which I got tired of. Why don't they just say, he was going to destroy the world, or he's going to rule the world, but they keep just reusing the phrase, throwing it into darkness. What does that actually mean? I presume it's not a literal darkness, but it's like, okay, so is it just going to be night all the time now? This villain really brought out my smartass side, but otherwise, for one, I could not take him seriously. One of the first things we see him do is get his ass kicked by Thor's mom. It's really hard to recover from that. And when he gets like the superpower about halfway into the movie, that just means that he's about comparable to Thor in terms of power. And even Thor has some smart aleck remarks like, with all that power, I thought you'd hit harder. And it's like the movie even can't take this villain seriously. He's even more of a butt monkey than Loki was, and but he's nowhere near as interesting as Loki was. And it's even stranger because his second in command is freaking more powerful than he is, even though he has this eternal power, or whatever the stupid MacGuffin was. The plot in general is kind of dumb. But the villain was kicking Thor's ass, the second in command was kicking Thor's ass pretty easily, whereas this guy just couldn't do quite as much damage. So the villains just sucked in general. What else can I even say? I didn't really feel there was a lot of suspense. Like, that these characters are probably not going to die by the end of the movie. Sorry, I just got Skyped. That, while you're watching the film, you're not thinking about that. You're into the film. You're into the story. You think, how is Thor going to get out of this or that? The first Thor did that well. All the other Marvel movies did that well. But here, I never felt anybody was in danger, even when it's trying to convince me that somebody is dying. And they do that quite a lot in this movie, too. So that's, once again, kind of tying back into Darcy killing the tone. It's like even the characters know that the villains aren't going to succeed in the very end of the movie, so why should we feel any fear? That edge is gone. That feeling that the villain is an actual threat is gone. And it just, once again, just made the film very amicable, enjoyable, but never really that exciting or intense. So is that all I have to say? I think so. It's an enjoyable flick, but I'd say all the other Marvel films had something that you could really grab onto and fully enjoy. Even The Incredible Hulk, which is overall my least favorite of all these movies. And even though I might prefer this over Iron Man 3, I'd still say Iron Man 3 was the better movie. And just because I say that this doesn't really have as much to grab onto as the other films, I'm not saying that it's the worst of them. No, I'd say I liked it more than Captain America, than Incredible Hulk and Iron Man 3, but otherwise probably none of the other ones. But it's just, I could see a lot of people really being disappointed. So that's all I have to say. Would I recommend it? If you saw the first one and you liked it, obviously yes. If you did not like the first one, then I don't know, watch at your own risk. And if you have not seen the first one, well, go and watch the first movie, and then we'll go from there. So that is all I've got. I'd like to make a special, special shout out to Loco Mamunk. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. It's his YouTube name. He did this interesting little bit of fan art of me, which I was really touched by. So I'll give a link of that into the description, as well as Twitter handle Spongy444. He's always been one of my favorite Twitter followers because he often responds to me. But he also made a TV tropes page, and that was really cool. I enjoyed seeing that. And I'll include a link for that too. In terms of written reviews, I've done, what have I done? Second in Command, a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, Kiss of the Damned, erotic vampire film, and Disciples of Shaolin, which is a kung fu flick that does not contain any actual mention of Shaolin. Great title, guys. But that is all I'll waste time with. I'll waste your time with. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys later.